Civilized society.
Welcome to Nietzsche Roulette, the series where we interpret Nietzsche for our modern day. Let's see what Nietzsche has to say in this episode. This is a good series because people get to learn about Nietzsche and we just kind of chat about it, so much more fun than having to actually read it yourself, Stick around. So many more Nietzsche roulettes coming down the pipe, the trail.
Yep.
Pipe.
All right, so we generate a random number. When we use a text, we're going to use Human All Too Human, a book for free spirits. And there's 638 different passages here. Random number generated today is 569. Let me find that passage.
Is it really say a book for free spirits?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. Self-satisfaction. The golden fleece of self-satisfaction protects against blows, but not against pinpricks.
Oh, Jesus. I was not ready for that one. What is self-satisfaction? This is the first thing you do. What is self-satisfaction? What does that mean? That's how you analyze these things, is by taking out the terms that have weight and then defining them. Because if self-satisfaction is some kind of arrogance, then you could say that what he's saying is your arrogance might protect you from kind of like overt attacks. Someone being like, you're a loser, you're a piece of shit. But it won't protect you from those tiny little slights where you actually feel the sting of your genuine insecurity. Like when someone just kind of ignores you, or when someone doesn't seem quite too excited to see you, or you do something and you don't do quite a good job on it. These are the pinpricks that cannot be defended from by self-satisfaction, if we define self-satisfaction as arrogance. I think that's around what it is, because the implication that pinpricks would get through self-satisfaction, but not these larger kind of attacks, implies that self-satisfaction is not really something that protects one in a satisfactory way. So perhaps it's not a good thing.
What do you know about the golden fleece, son?
Oh, I didn't even think about the golden fleece. Say the quote again?
Self-satisfaction. The golden fleece of self-satisfaction protects against blows, but not against pinpricks.
The golden fleece. I don't know about the golden fleece.
You don't know about that old Jason and the Argonauts?
I'm sorry. No, I don't.
You don't know about that old Jason and the Argonauts? Rocking out across the Black Sea, adventuring?
Can't say I do.
Some Greek history, some Greek mythology. No
As
word of the
Nietzsche
podcast
liked.
here, so you don't have the Greek roots of any of this. But anyway, so, Jason and his Argonauts, they jumped in a boat. They ran around the Black Sea. They called it something else back in the day. And they did adventures. If you remember, people of a certain age will recall the claymation remake movies of Greek myths that aired on things like TBS in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
You familiar with that?
This was a
You've
high
seen
point in culture, actually. I think that was great. I remember that vaguely.
Do you remember? It would always be, and they played them a lot.
Yeah. So weird.
It was always just like, they had Sinbad, did they, maybe? Sinbad wasn't even part of that. He wasn't part of the Greek myths.
I remember Sinbad at that time, which is like, why was that around? I mean, great,
Not the
good. That's why
comedian
we're so great. That's why our generation is not totally fucked. But
Not Sinbad, the comedian. Talking about
Wait.
Sinbad the sailor.
I don't know of Sinbad the comedian.
Oh. Okay, so the golden fleece apparently is we won't go into all the mythology of it. Basically, Jason swiped the golden fleece. He stole it. There's this basically supernatural ram or whatever, and then someone sacrificed it to Zeus, and then its fleece became a symbol of authority and kingship. So one way to read this would be to say the authority that comes, the self-satisfaction which comes from authority protects against blows, but not against pinpricks. That's another way you can maybe think of it. It's how I think of it. It's how I think of myself. I think of myself in this podcast as often wrapped in a golden fleece of authority.
I bet you do. That would
I
explain
do.
a
I
lot.
walk, and I am protected against the blows of, well, just in general, but not so much against the pinpricks.
No, I'm the one that wields the pinpricks. There's no defense against that. Oh, I like that. It's an anti-authority statement. God love him. I love when Nietzsche comes through with those nuggets of anti-authority that I love. He's saying that just because you've got some authority and it might make you feel good about yourself doesn't mean that those little pinpricks that pry away at one's ego won't still get past the golden fleece.
Is this part of your trying to be an anarchist phase?
My anarchist phase.
So I think we need to document, and proclaim
Let's
on this
document
podcast.
it.
You're trying to be an
I've
anarchist.
had a friend of mine send me silence.
Molotov cocktail.
Silence. There's a dog here that thinks there's anarchy, but there's never anarchy. If you have a dog, never allow anarchy.
No.
Leave it. For dogs, it's authoritarianism. That's how you rule dogs. Authoritarianism, purely. That's what they respond to. This is why we're evolved, okay? Because you don't want to be a dog, right? You want to be a human. And so what is the antithesis of the way that you would rule a human or a dog for a human? If dogs are they live best under authoritarianism, then we do not want that for ourselves. We want the opposite. Anarchy. You see, also, I had a brilliant idea. Let's just go in this direction. My proposal.
Hold on one moment. Let me double over the golden fleece. I need more protection. My pretend golden fleece. The golden fleece is really in the mind, people. Remember that. It's not a real thing.
That's true. Yeah, don't be looking
Go
for
ahead.
a golden fleece in the real world. You might do some harm to some poor innocent rams. Listen, I had a fucking brilliant idea, an anti-authority idea, and we'll go here with this. Nietzsche has inspired it.
I'll prick it with a pen.
You may try. The final ascended state of humanity actually is anarchy. Why? Because, like children, as we gain maturity and grow, what do? You give children more freedom. As human beings, as a species, as we mature and ascend, what do? We gain more freedom. We are able to govern ourselves. The whole trajectory of humanity is going from like lack of even identity, just tribal existence as a group, to definition and ownership of the self, and onwards to more freedom and more freedom. And so the end point should be anarchy. If one would conclude from the pattern that is going on, if people continue to mature and we become more responsible, more conscious as a species, then we earn more freedom. The problem here is that...
There's a lot of problems, but go ahead. You want to go ahead and set out your own problem before I tell you them?
This is my anti-authoritarian argument also. It's a
progressive vision. I really appreciate this, a progressive vision.
It's an anarchist vision. Don't soil it.
No, it's a progressive vision.
It's a vision of fucking heaven, okay? You think there's authority in heaven?
Yes. For sure. Literally the entire story of, Christianity is hierarchical authority, literally set down from a god into the hierarchy of angels and then down,
That's a
farther
problem.
down.
As I said it, I knew that it was
beings,
flawed.
and then there's literally even a hierarchy of hell if you went and get the magic. But anyway, the problem with your idea...
Well, no, silence. There's hierarchies in anarchy. There's hierarchies in anarchy.
Don the golden fleece.
There are hierarchies in anarchy. They're just not entrenched by the state. That's the thing. My claim that there's no authority in heaven, yes, this is flawed. This is wrong. I admit live on the podcast, I'm not ashamed to admit when I am wrong. I was wrong to say that there's no authority in heaven. That's not true. There is. But on earth, there shan't be. Because
You
who
don't
among
understand
men,
anything
who
about
among
history.
men deserves the authority of gods? Okay? I'm losing my mind in Lake Tahoe.
It's fine.
Like becoming an anarchist
Aristotle,
and questioning
we're really
God.
jumping all over the place.
It's
but that's
fun.
the point.
It's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun.
Aristotle laid out something called the chain of being. Are you aware of that? The chain of being is
Aristotle was
definitely...
a fascist.
Okay, so let me make this easier for why you're wrong. And this is a theme that will run through episodes in the future for me as I descend into madness. I don't really believe that time is linear anymore. And the problem with all progressive visions of utopia, which is what you're saying, is you're imagining this kind of evolution of human beings. It's like the little thing that you saw atheists like
yes,
to wear,
the
where there's like
humans
little
out of
ape,
the
and then he
fish
turns into
to
a
the-
thing.
Yeah.
Cro-Magnon man, and then like all of a sudden you become Plato, and then at the end you become some sort of ascended being that's totally reasonable and has no need of any sort of authority. Okay, so I don't believe in that for a bunch of different reasons. First, I can open my eyes and look at the world, and all I see is a bunch of like slumped over obese disasters of humanity, and we're living in one of the most free times ever. And also, it's not clear to me. I'm a little concerned about your Eurocentric model of time. You think that time keeps on progressing, and it's not clear to me that's the case. It very well may be that we live in cycles of epochs of increase and decrease.
Okay. Yes. But what
But
if
I
I'm
still
just...
want you to be right, by the way,
Okay,
just so
thanks.
you know.
Me too.
In my heart, I want you to be right.
Thanks. I
just see no
appreciate it.
evidence that you are.
Well, okay, look, I know that we're living in like one of the freest times ever, and it seems like people are really not doing great, and in some ways clamoring for less freedom. Embarrassing, not good, not a good look, as they say on Twitter.biz. But at the
Because
same
they can't
time,
take care of
people
themselves.
can
People
read.
need you. You think people aren't dogs, and I don't either. But it's unclear to me that they're capable of
I know.
freedom.
Look, but the thing
Go
is,
for it, though,
compared
by
to
the way.
compared to it's difficult because look, if you compare the shit from like a few decades ago to like the 80s and 70s, yeah, we're not doing well. We're not doing well. Government is bigger. Everything is not working as well, and people seem to be shittier, more antagonized, and like their brains are not working as well. I genuinely believe that. I think we're all having more medical problems, all that shit. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I'm not saying all things are one thing. But if you span it out, right, if you go even further and you're going centuries, we are doing a lot better. Okay, like compared to all the centuries prior, like century, like 1800s beyond, the average
We
person...
invented antibiotics. That was a big one. I appreciate that idea.
Yes,
that
yes.
was helpful.
The average person. We got to talk about the average person. Okay, think of the average person in the 1700s and think of the average person now. The average person now does know a lot more. They are smarter. They know more. They do. They get a more of an education. They just know more random shit. They know how to do more random shit. Like,
that part, not sure. But yes, I agree with you that in general, IQ has gone up with time, kind of. And people do live a more... They have access to information for sure.
Some ways
whether
we
they
are
know
more
what to do
civilized,
more, I'm not
right?
sure.
We do. We aren't as racist and as prejudiced and as like, like against women or whatever. We don't think things are magic. Well, some of us do. But, I think like we're more reasonable in some ways. And there is something to say for the kind of emotional maturity that is like, I feel that it's very hard to understand that that we as a culture and humans, whatever, it's not as bad as it looks. It looks bad. But at the same time, there are these pockets of things that are really good, right? Like the Lex Friedman conversation with Kanye. That was to me a really good moment. I was like, okay, that's actually good. That's actually really like moving the shit forward as a culture to be dealing with these kind of offensive, controversial ideas in a public forum using discourse and reasonable discussion. That's a win. It's an unequivocal win. Okay? So it's not like the whole of consciousness. The whole of consciousness is always going to be the lowest. But you got to look for these pockets where people, individuals, pop forward and show what we could get to if we don't destroy ourselves and if we keep going in that direction. Do you understand? Do you understand? This is why I'm the public intellectual that our times need, okay? We're putting out ideas here for people to think of. Maybe they're all wrong, but they are theories. We are theorizing. We are offering visions of the future that people can grapple with and consider in their lives. This is the role of a public intellectual.
You're offering a vision. You already know it's coming. You know what? I'm going to be nice. I've decided randomly, just all of a sudden, just to be nice about everything for the remainder of this episode. Okay. I'm going to agree with you that the absolute climax of intellectual discourse in this country is a conversation between Lex Friedman, an autistic computer programmer, and Kanye West, a rapper. So, you know what? That sounds good. I agree with that. Golden fleece on the shoulders, rocking out towards your progressive vision of anarchist utopia, where we have no need for laws, but somehow also authority, but it won't be the state, but somehow also there's hierarchy. I love it.
It'll be interesting.
Well, it would be if that were even going to happen, but it's not. So
you watch. I'm going to turn the peasant radio into an anarchist collective. That's kind of, you don't have to be an anarchist, by the way. I just adopt the aesthetic with me because I think it's more interesting. I mean, what are you going to do? Be like a Democrat or something? Like, that's so boring and old. Let's try something new. Well, anarchy is relatively new.
That's because you treat, like all people in your generation, your politics as a fashion statement.
At least mine is interesting.
That's what everyone says.
People are worse about it, though, because they treat it, it's better to treat it as the fashion statement than a fucking identity. Because at least I'm just like, today I'm going to be an anarchist. Tomorrow I feel like being a libertarian. Tomorrow I'll be a neo-lib. You know, like I'll just dart around as the weather calls for it. That's actually... next public intellectual moment, next vision that I offer the people, this is actually the ascended and most interesting and joyful way to grapple with politics and these things that become identities and labels, is to actually treat them like they're completely flippant and just be like, no, today I'm an anarchist. And then tomorrow you can be like,
you know what?
I feel like a communist today. I don't care. Make it useless. Don't adapt it into your identity and to the fiber of your being so that you can take it off as you like and people don't go into this tribal warfare mindset when anyone's like, hey, that sounds slightly wrong. Because you're telling me, oh, anarchist, everything's wrong. And I'm just like, I don't care. Because today I'm just going to be it and then tomorrow I'll change my mind.
Let's bring this around. Silence for a second. Let's bring this around to the quote because it's actually interesting. The golden fleece of self-satisfaction protects against blows, but not against pinpricks. So now let's adopt for a moment this idea that you have of essentially not believing anything and just pretending to believe things day by day as a kind of protection mechanism, right? Because if you don't really believe anything, if you don't really identify with anything, regardless of whatever it may be, your politics, race, your religion, whatever, all these things that actually have throughout human history basically given people identity in various different ways, for good and for ill. So now let's just imagine you're this completely unhinged, basically, person who adopts just whatever is basically in the infosphere of Twitter and social media in the day. You latch on this idea because you're like, this sounds neat or whatever, and you adopt that. It's a very good, actually, camouflage and way to live in a world such we find ourselves, because you don't have to actually believe anything. So you just kind of like, yeah, I liked this idea today, but you know, that's fine. So that golden fleece is kind of an invisibility cloak.
It's a golden invisibility cloak of fleece.
I think it is good to explore ideas. I'm down for that. And I do believe in the anarchist spirit. I like the spirit of anarchy.
Yeah, that's what I'm embodying. Look, I'm not saying I'm going to, run for president as an anarchist. What the fuck am I going to... I mean, I'll do it for fun. That sounds fun. That sounds hilarious. I do it for
Why don't you just go ahead and proclaim your candidacy right now?
I am going to run for president of the United States on the anarchist bill.
Okay.
Is there an anarchist party? Is that a thing? That's not. You can't do that, right? You should do it. That would be really funny. I'm gonna make the anarchist party of America. Yes, that's so fun. I'm gonna do that. Okay, that's really fun. That's a good idea. I hope there isn't one so that I can do it. Listen.
You want to go ahead and conclude this absurdity and
Why?
then move on so that we can do another one, because I feel like we've really gotten as much as we possibly could from this one sentence, which is brilliant.
Of course it is. Well, listen, the thing that
Yeah, we're done. You're just. What are you doing over there?
I'm thinking.
not
I'm
running.
thinking.
Okay.
The thing is that I like to drive home the idea of treating your politics and all this identity shit as a fashion statement, because I actually think that it's the way to diffuse the intensity, the tribalism, and the extremism, is to make these identities so detachable and so superficial that people have no problem dropping them and picking them up at will. Because then you wouldn't be so...
That's an insane
so
solution
fun.
and a terrible solution.
No, it's better than what we have now, where people are like, I'll fight to the death over this fucking idea because I couldn't stand the idea of being wrong and being aligned with something different than what I am.
You're talking about basically a mild nihilism as an antidote towards really mild political tumult, you like that word, in this country at this point. We're not even on the streets like fighting each other hardcore. Like, so your solution to people being mad on Twitter is just don't believe in anything. That's what you're saying. You're saying
No. Believe.
It is a
believe
no, that
while
is.
you pick it up. I believe in anarchy right now. I'm not lying. I'm serious. I think it's pretty fucking sound. Like, the more I look into it, the more I'm like, you know what? We could use a little bit of this right now. We could use a little bit. And I'm not wrong. Government at this level is absolutely out of control. I mean, you have like the Department of whatever security trying to pressure social media companies to censor shit. This is out of control. The best thing for this country right now is less government. So
we can't even have a podcast about Nietzsche without bringing in politics. So the idea that you can even dance around...
Nietzsche is talking about authority. And why would you not talk about politics when you're talking about authority?
No, fair enough. But I mean, your idea is to adopt different little things from different political ideologies or whatever, which that in and of itself is doesn't make any sense at all.
That's what I've always done, though. That's literally what I do. I don't ascribe to any one particular party. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not an anarchist, actually adopted to it. I just go to what I see is appropriate at the time, and I go policy by policy, issue by issue, and whatever seems to be resonating with me, like what's giving me the right vibes for what our country's energy is calling for, that's what I gravitate to. And so right now my spirit is pulling me towards anarchy.
Yeah, you see why this is a completely just...
But I'm actually fucking having fun and joyful, and I'm learning shit. Because right now I'm like, you know what? I do think that government is out of control. I do think that I want to understand the anarchist argument, because I don't ever think that there would be a real state of anarchy or something. I just don't think it would happen. I think it's useful to understand what the extreme of trying to, destroy the state would be. Just want to know a little bit about destroying the state. That's all. Just a little bit of information over here. And then we'll see where I go. I'm not tied to these political identities because I will not be a mule. I will not be some kind of dog tied to a political tree. You understand? These people are in chains, okay? They become enslaved by their own identities. It's sick, it's boring, it's sad, it's destroying everything. Take it off. Take it off.
People can have an identity without being enslaved to it or driven crazy by it if they actually believe in it. Silence for a second. I don the golden fleece and I demand silence.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
You can actually have an identity without it being toxic in a bunch of different ways and without it harming yourself. You can have a belief, by the way. It's insane that I have to say this to a person. You can have an actual fundamental belief without being harmful to yourself or to others, if that's even the highest measure of goodness or whatever, is not having harm, which I think is retarded also, but fine. All those things can occur. I think that this weird hippie vision you have of like just adopting The problem is you're like, I adopt this point of view on a certain issue as I feel like as I deal with it day to day. But if you don't have any fundamental underlying identity, your ability to actually
Okay, but I know what you're going to say.
grapple with any given idea is it's non-existent.
This is the problem. Yeah, and this is what I was going to say. Yes, you're correct, actually. The reason I'm able to do this is because I do have a fundamental identity, but it's not tied to something like that is so external to myself. I believe in my principles. I believe in living in a certain way, by a certain philosophy, but not by an ideology. And so because of that, I'm able to toy with ideologies and use them as I see fit and go from one to the other. And I don't feel like I need to go fully and invest with anyone because I don't actually need that identity because I have an identity. I think that's what a lot of the problem is that when I look at people become so fused with political movements and ideologies, it's clear that they use it as a way to gain identity, to gain some kind of group identity because they likely have a weak individual identity. I have a very strong individual identity. I feel very good about who I am and how I make decisions in the world. I don't need an ideology as an instruction manual. So I feel free to be like, little anarchy today, a little bit of that tomorrow, a little bit of this. I'll go. It's fine because at the end of the day, I have a place where I return to, which is my internal compass, my being, my individuality. That's my set identity.
That's your golden fleece.
My golden fleece.
Golden fleece of self-satisfaction, by the way. But fair enough, even though, I mean, there's plenty of ways I could challenge all that, but I don't want to. You understand that the end result of that, though, in a very like Machiavellian outlook of the way things are in current America 2022, is that you've basically just expended a lot of energy to become politically castrated. It's a little weird to call it politically castrated, but you know, what's the other word for penises that don't work?
Eunuch.
Impotent. Politically
eunuch.
impotent.
Oh.
A political eunuch. But you've also just expended a lot of effort to do it.
But
so as opposed to someone who's just like
define this.
So the end result of say like not voting, because I hear a lot of anarchists like don't vote, it's dumb. So the end result of that is why bother saying I'm an anarchist and that's why I don't do it? Why not just say I want to play a video game instead? Because the result is the same. You're not going to... we live in the system we live in, unfortunately. It is what it is. And so there is a pragmatic approach to this, which is like you have to make a decision. And, you know, with regards to, say, voting or something like that, or any other political action you want to take.
Well...
So, I mean, it kind of feels just like a really elaborate way of saying I don't feel like going to vote or doing anything, which I get it. But in another way, I have friends who are just like, I'd rather smoke weed and play video games and vote. It comes to the same thing. And I mean, they save themselves a lot of energy by just
Yeah, but they're not
saying
studying anarchist lectures. Okay, like I'm actually learning shit. I've decided that right now, this is the area of study that I'm into. This is what I'm going to lean into right now. And voting, I think the anarchist argument is that it is your right to opt out. Like it is your right to say like none of these people represent me and I'm not going to participate in a system that says that this person should represent me because I don't believe that they should. And so whatever, I respect that. I get the, like, you don't have to, like, you could still just vote. Like you can do whatever you want. But this is, I forgot. You had made a point I was going to say and I lost it.
I respect that idea also. I'm talking about what the actual result of it is. And the result of it is that you're the same person as the person who just, you know, was hanging out playing video games.
This is not true. This is what I was going to say is that, like, think about how, you know, Democrat and Republican, let's look at it from that framework, because these people, a lot of the times they become so embedded, so like hostage to the party that they cannot consider the idea of voting for anyone outside the party, even if the person that's within the party that they vote for is a terrible option. They will still vote blue. Like they cannot conceive of the idea of exiting, even just temporarily, even just for one candidate, their party, because it becomes a part of their identity. So I think what I'm advocating for is actually not political castration, because when I see that kind of dynamic, people that are fused with a political party, they become political hostages where they actually effectively have no choice because they are so tied to their party their political ideology, that they have no choice because they're not willing to go otherwise. It's like a battered relationship or whatever, where it's like the party is like, the DNC is like, where are you going to go anyway? They're like, nowhere. And so they just don't. They stay. And so what do you get? Oh, I vote, but like, it's not a real choice because I'm being fed gruel in terms of political candidates. You know what I mean? It's actually ends up being the same kind of thing.
I know what you mean. It's the same arguments I've heard all my life, and I understand it.
I don't think it's the same argument you've heard all your life.
It is. It is still. I mean, I was having this argument in the year 2000 when I was like going to go vote for the Green Party or whatever, but I got drunk and fell asleep and didn't get up in time. So it's all the same arguments, like really, and it's fine. I'm down for it.
You're projecting
I don
on
the
me.
golden fleece. What?
You projecting on me, okay? Your trauma, your guilt over not going to vote for the Green Party in the 2000 election. That's not
Ralph
my
Nader.
burden.
Which, by the way, the argument back then, by the way, remember, the people that actually did wake up in time to vote in 2000 was that, and you're correct about this. This is why I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just not new. People were like, if you hadn't have voted for Ralph Nader and you had to vote for Al Gore, then it would have changed because remember, Florida was actually what the whole election was based on in 2000. So anyway,
I remember,
I would
and
just
I
like
rebuke that.
Yeah, it's rebuked.
Because you should be able to get drunk and not vote. And you should be able to vote for a party that's going to lose.
Anarchy.
And you should see, and you
I've
should
been
be able
practicing
to
anarchy
vote
for a long
for the
time.
opposite party. If you feel like your party's being a bitch, you know what? Vote for the opposite party out of spite. Sure. Play with it. Do whatever the fuck you want. I'm sick of the static identities. I'm sick of all the modern day mental slavery that I see. It is saddening. It is pathetic. People are not living as full human beings. They're not even living as half human beings.
You need to look. I'm going to end this by saying, number one, everybody needs a golden fleece, but also respect the ram. Yeah. I will also say, don't be a political dildo. I will also say, I made an analogy a long time ago about Twitter being a haunted house full of insane people that it's dangerous to go into. And that every time you talk about it, I always say, I'm standing there in the hill and I'm telling you, don't go into that place. And you're like, but I really want to because it's fun. I did go vote recently. And it was just a very orderly process of relatively nice people who were kind of just in line doing things. And yeah, sure, you make all the arguments. It doesn't matter, this, that, whatever. You know, it's not. But, you know, a lot of this rhetoric about everything's insane and everybody's fused to their identity. I didn't actually see a lot of people who were fused to their identity one way or the other in the voting office. I saw like mainly old people who they weren't like dressed in like Donald Trump mask or Joe Biden mask or whatever. They were just kind of doing a thing they felt like kind of was their responsibility as a citizen of a country that technically has elections or whatever. So, you know, a lot of this is it's extremism. It's fake extreme concern about people online.
Maybe.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm an anarchist. I woke
Yeah.
up at 9 p.m. Anarchy.
That's nihilism. That's not anarchy. That's the nihilism you speak of. You accuse me. J'accuse me of nihilism, but I see it in you. Listen.
If you understood anything about Friedrich Nietzsche, you would understand the concept of active nihilism. However, listeners and viewers alike, I am afraid that you're going to have to wait for another episode of Nietzsche Roulette where I will explain to you the concept of active nihilism. But for now, would you please hit that like button, subscribe, check us out on patreon.com, check us out on all the social media platforms, twitter.biz, parlor.ru, gab.net,
sending people to places we aren't.
Telegram.Saudi Arabia, whatever it is. Anarchy, goodbye.
Anarchy out.